Good morning. Chris Lee and Chase Robinson of Southeastern 16 here for some off-season football talk because it's the SEC and we always talk football no matter what the time of year. And plus, the calendar never stops. Chase, we've got several things that are kind of newsworthy to discuss. We're going to go talk about Ryan Grubb's tenure starting at Alabama. Reunion with Kalen DeBoer. We'll talk into that. I think a lot of things that come off that. We'll talk Oklahoma. Some staff shuffles there with Brent Venables, and Missouri getting a quarterback too, in a high-profile one in the portal. So lots to unpack today. We'll take your questions, your comments, all that stuff too. Chase, though, let's go to Alabama. I think the Ryan Grubb thing has been maybe in the works for a while. It was supposed to be something that was going to happen last year. And then Ryan Grubb, of course, got the offer to be the Seahawks offensive coordinator, which hard to blame him for that. But a year later, we get what we thought we'd be getting in January of 2024. Let's start with the significance of this hire.
Yeah, it's huge for Alabama. And, yeah, as soon as he was let go by the Seahawks a couple of weeks ago, you thought, okay, this is his time to come to Tuscaloosa. I mean, he did everything. He came to the press conference last year when DeBoer was hired. He did everything but sign the contract. He started talking with players and meeting with boosters and things like that in Tuscaloosa January of last year. And then after 2.5 weeks was offered and stayed in Seattle. And so you knew when the time came for him to have another opportunity, I thought he would take it. And when DeBoer was asked last week at the Senior Bowl if Ryan Grubb was going to make a return, he kind of left it open-ended at, hey, I'm letting him take his time on a decision. He said, but I'm always here for him. And you could tell, that he wanted his guy with him. And so that's the case. Sunday, it became official that Ryan Grubb's returning, I guess technically you could say returning to Tuscaloosa to take over as the offensive coordinator. And Nick Sheridan, who served as the offensive coordinator, is staying on staff, and Jamarcus Shepard, who was on the staff, is staying. So those two guys will have roles, and I don't see it as a demotion for Nick Sheridan. I really don't. I see it, they're getting the band back together. These are DeBoer's guys, the guys he has won a lot of games with, and he's putting a staff in place that I think is going to win some games. And I don't think that it's a demotion for Nick Sheridan, who served as offensive coordinator. I think this is what's best for the program. I'm sure he sees it that way as well, that he gets to stay on staff. He gets to go to a position that he's very familiar with, and a guy who has been a genius offensive coordinator gets to take over the offense at Alabama. I think it's a best case scenario for all parties involved there in Alabama.
Chase, I want to get into the ties that he's got with Kalen DeBoer because I think that's important, and boy, are there many of them. But Alabama football is coming off a disappointing season, no question about it. I think we thought when the playoff expanded to 12, Alabama would be there, which makes the sting of it even more, knowing there were so many playoff berths that didn't happen. What is the excitement level around this hire, and does that change the mood around Alabama football? Because I don't think it was great at the least leaving last season.
No, I think this hire brings tons of excitement. One, because and I think some of it has to do with, look, I didn't think that the play calling or scheming was bad for Alabama last year. It was just inconsistent play. And so I think this year's kind of a reset year. You're bringing in, you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator. You've got a group of quarterbacks who, there's not a lot of experience, but they're good quarterbacks. And so Grubb has a chance to now work with these guys and build it. He's had some great quarterbacks that he's coached that Grubb and DeBoer have coached together. And so I think when fans see that makes them more excited about the future of the quarterback, knowing the type of guys that DeBoer and Grubb have coached together in the past. And I just think that Ryan Grubb tends to get the best out of the guys he coaches on his side of the ball. And so I think that's another thing that will help with maybe some of the inconsistencies we saw for Alabama offensively this year.
Yeah, it was just a weird year because I think they were top 5 in yards per play or close to it. They faced a brutal schedule last year. I think frankly, it's a program that felt like it's had some Jalen Milroe fatigue. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that's Jalen Milroe. Excuse me. I'm not even saying that's all Jalen Milroe's fault. It just feels like that has kind of gotten stale. So I'm kind of interested to see where the quarterback dynamic goes, for one. But you're looking at a guy in Ryan Grubb. You go back to 2022, his first year at Washington, completely overhauled that offense when DeBoer was in Seattle. They led the country in passing yards, I think, 7th in total offense or 2nd in total offense, 7th in scoring. And this is not like an offense that needs like a – it's not like they were 70th in the country in offense. They were good. They weren't Alabama good, but they weren't bad. I'll be very interested to see what that looks like this next year between the aspect of you're getting a new quarterback and now you're getting the OC that DeBoer wanted all along.
Yeah, and Jalen Milroe did not fit. The more I've dove into DeBoer and Grubb a lot over the last couple of days, and the more I see the type of quarterback that they are used to having and that they've always had, it's not Jalen Milroe. And so I think it was just, and even Nick Sheridan, who was offense coordinator this year, who's been under DeBoer at a lot of these stops as well and has worked closely with Grubb. Jalen Milroe is not the type of quarterback that they were used to coaching. And I think we're going to see offensively for Alabama something totally different next year, because you look at the track record for Grubb. In the 5 years that he's been an offensive coordinator in college football, he has only had one quarterback that he has coached that has gone over 100 yards rushing in a season. They don't run the ball. A quarterback under Grubb and DeBoer do not run the football. They throw it. Now, they may have 12 interceptions at the end of the year. Okay, that's okay with them. They're going to throw the football. They're going to air that thing out. And so when Jalen Milroe, when his first choice was to run the ball, when he didn't have anywhere to go. And so I think that's a big difference you're going to see from last year to this year with Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, Keelan Russell, whoever it is that's quarterback at Alabama. They are going to be throwing that thing all over the yard. And you think that's how Michael Penix had a lot of success at Washington in his time there. He threw the football. And it just didn't work that way this year. And that's what DeBoer's used to. And so I think the more I look into this, and the more, in watching Jalen Milroe practice a little bit, some of the video at the Senior Bowl last week, and he's a run-first guy, and that's not what DeBoer's offensive system is. And I think we saw that at times this year. There's some great receivers at Alabama, and I think they're going to be used a lot this year to spread the ball out. Again, whoever's at quarterback, because I think the 3 guys in the quarterback room that are getting talked about a lot, this Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, and Keelan Russell. Those are the 3 main guys in the quarterback room at Alabama. All 3 of them can sling the football, and all 3 of them fit more of this pro-style offense that Ryan Grubb runs. He's not looking for a dual threat quarterback. He's looking for a guy with a strong arm. And so I think that's the big difference we're going to see in what Ryan Grubb is going to do offensively this year for Alabama. And again, I think these quarterbacks fit that system better than anything else. So I think we'll see a big change offensively for Alabama next year.
Yeah, he did a great job developing Michael Penix into a first rounder. I'm just curious, and look, we are at least a month out from spring football. Gut feeling, who becomes the guy in that offense? Who fits best?
At this point, I'll say Ty Simpson, because I feel like he has more experience than the other guys. But then we've seen it in the past. Guys with less experience may just be more skilled, and so they may get the job. But Ty Simpson in high school, was a throw first quarterback. He can run it a little bit, but he has a good pocket presence. And so I think Ty Simpson really fits what Ryan Grubb does. And obviously Grubb and DeBoer recruited Austin Mack. And so
Yeah.
Obviously he probably fits really well into what they're doing. We haven't seen much of him at all. So, Grubb and Nick Sheridan also recruited him a lot. And Nick Sheridan was a huge part of recruiting Keelan Russell. And so, those guys kind of fit that mold that DeBoer and company like. But I do think Ty Simpson will fit really well because, again, he has a very strong arm, and that's what they're looking for.
See, I thought you'd say Austin Mack based on the ties to Washington and all that. He's a big guy. I mean, the reports that I've heard out of there on him have been pretty positive. So I think it's going to be interesting.
I think so too. But experience level, that's why I went with Ty Simpson, is because he has gotten in some games when Austin Mack really hasn't. But I could see Mack coming in and getting the starting job. I really could. I'll put it this way: it's not Ty Simpson's job as some people think it is, especially with this change now at offensive coordinator. I think you're kind of hitting the reset button, and these guys are going to have to fight it out. And I think it will be a pretty good quarterback competition.
How do I say this? Do you kind of give him DeBoer a mulligan on last year? Because it wasn't the quarterback that he probably would have chosen given his system. We've just gone over that.
Yeah.
I think you had some locker room issues with this team. Locker room may be a strong way to put it. There was a strong sentiment on the team that I think 2 years ago that those guys wanted Milroe to be the guy. And I think that kind of boxed Nick Saban in a little bit. I remember the South Florida game where he was serving a de facto suspension. So you walk into that, you're changing coaches. I feel like there would be a lot of internal pressure to make Milroe your quarterback, which, look, I mean, based on the way he played the year before too, right? He was a Heisman candidate coming into the season. I'm not saying like, oh, Kalen DeBoer's hands were tied and he wanted to have Milroe as their quarterback and just couldn't do it. That's not at all. Milroe probably should have been their quarterback, but as you pointed out, not the greatest fit. The coordinator he wanted from day one was coming until he wasn't. And you go to comfort level with this guy. Okay, we go all the way back to Sioux Falls High School where they coached together, DeBoer and Grubb. Was a position coach at Eastern Michigan when DeBoer, I think, was the OC there. When DeBoer went to Fresno State, he was his OC, and then went with him to Washington, where he changed it immediately. Like that's two big elements right there, Chase, of better fit between whoever the quarterback is and now the OC that you wanted all along. And I'll be very curious. Look, don't get me wrong. Alabama had plenty of talent. Could have made the playoff anyway. But it feels like it lines up way better this year than it did a year ago.
No, I completely agree. And look, thinking back to last season for DeBoer, it was his first year at Alabama. There was a lot of talent, and people want to say, well, he had all the talent in the world. He should have won all these games. Well, you have to think about coaches. Different guys fit in different coaches' mold. They fit in systems. Some guys are better in one system. Some are better in another. This is Don's comment here. He's an Alabama guy who gives DeBoer a complete pass on last season. Yes, there was talent, but you have to think like these. It's a different system what DeBoer runs than what Alabama was used to running, and so I'm not doom and gloom on Alabama or Kalen DeBoer because I think once and this is for any coach anywhere, you got to get your guys in there. You got to get the guys who fit your system in on your team and then go to work. And it takes work to build that. So that's why I never want to put a coach out, after their first year. Like, let the guy get his system implemented, get the guys that fit his system, fit his mold the best in there, and then see how he does. And I think this will be an important year for Kalen DeBoer this year, for sure, as he's getting some of his guys in there. He's got his staff in there in place. Like, I think we'll see the real Kalen DeBoer Alabama in 2025 and not in 2024.
Don brought up a point, too, that we have brought up many times. I did not think the talent level was vintage Alabama. And I'm going to ask you, how many guys on that offense last year would have started for just an average Nick Saban team over, what was it, year 2 when he won a national title, got it rolling? So throughout the first year, how many guys on that offense last year would have started on a vintage Nick Saban team? Because I can think of one or two maybe, and I'm not even the one that comes to mind. I'm not even sure about on some of his more veteran teams.
You're right. Very, very few. I would agree 2 or 3.
All right, give me the names you're thinking. I want to see if we're on the same track here.
I think Ryan Williams would have.
Yeah, but I don't know that he would have started. Like, if you want to really put it under a microscope, would he have started in 2020 with that room full of receivers? No, that is an unfair question, because that is a probably top 5 receiving group in the history of college football.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Ryan Williams would have played. They were blowing so many teams out.
Yeah. I think a couple of guys on the offensive line definitely would have. I think it was I liked the offensive line. I felt like that was what we've seen in years past, Alabama offensive line. Not the whole line, a couple of guys on there. Past that, yeah,
I mean, Justice Haynes
blanks.
would have been RB4 on some of those teams, I think.
Yeah.
And he's talented. I mean, and like he's still a good ball player. And of course he's gone now, but that's my point is, and after Williams, forget it. Like, none of those guys are, and even at tight end.
Right.
They've had some better tight end groups than what they had last year.
Yeah.
You know, you had a gosh, they lost one in the portal last year, didn't they? Big one. I think, now that I'm trying to remember, who did they lose? Before last season. They lost someone to Texas, right?
I'm drawing a blank here, but
I
yes,
am too. But right, like even there, it wasn't what they have been. And Don makes my point. These were great players, but because you got so many veterans. So I think part of it's an acknowledgement. Isaiah Bond, who was a receiver, that he also left for Texas. Don points out. But anyway, I think that's a fair point to be made too.
No, yeah, I completely agree. Like, and again, you're not going to be as stacked as we saw in Alabama being in 08, 09, 10,
I'm not sure that day's coming back for anybody. I mean, you've seen Georgia take a hit there. Like, right, and Georgia did it more on defense. Not that their offense wasn't pretty elite too, but you're looking at future Pro Bowlers running second team, maybe third team occasion for Kirby Smart, and the portal has eaten away everybody's ability to do that. So I'm probably comparing it to an era that's gone and is not coming back anytime players can get paid at a lot of places. But that is a standard that DeBoer walked into.
Yeah.
Year one. It's just that expectations. I don't think the context was ever, your context, if you're an Alabama fan, is, hey, we've been winning natties or getting close every year, and that's all that's mattered. But I think that, and this is where I think too, Chase, that if you are going to level out everybody's talent across the board, that's where scheme and coaching might be a little bit more important, rather than just running out a bunch of Pro Bowlers and saying you can't stop us because football's a physical game with athletes and yeah.
No, yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's coaching is golden right now. You gotta have, obviously you gotta have good players, but you gotta have good coaches too. You gotta have good scheming, and I think that's what Alabama's getting in Ryan Grubb to help the offensive scheming as far as it goes in the play calling.
What do you think the recruiting implications of this are? Because I think, to me, this makes Alabama a more exciting destination as an offensive player. You keep Sheridan and Shepard on staff. I don't know what their recruiting ties are. You would know that way better than I would. But I don't see a big downside to what Alabama's done here.
No, and Sheridan and Shepard are major recruiters. I mean,
Yeah.
they are huge in recruiting at Alabama, and so I think that with them staying on, that's definitely going to help with the relationships they have. Grubb is at Washington was a great recruiter, so I imagine that he will be at Alabama as well. So yeah, I think it elevates recruiting, especially obviously on that side of the ball, to have Grubb, Sheridan, and Shepard all working the recruiting trail now. And I think based off of the quarterbacks that Grubb has coached, I think guys are going to want to come play for him because he's had some really good quarterbacks under him.
How will Alabama do recruiting with him? But like you said, he's a good recruiter. Some coaches just, like, you see this sometimes when a coordinator is so good, they want to hire him. He doesn't like to recruit. They'll just say, okay, you're just kind of on staff to coach and not to do that. But like the places he has been are not Deep South ties. No, look, Alabama can also recruit nationally, and so maybe it doesn't matter. I'm just curious where they fit that in.
Yeah, I mean, at this point of recruiting, and I talk to recruiting guys quite often, and while I do think it is important for them to be able to recruit, the South, I think that they have, especially with Courtney Morgan, the general manager, is an excellent recruiter as well. I think they have the tools to recruit the South and go nationally and do well at both. Alabama in the past has just, sold itself per se. People wanted to come play and with the Alabama on their jersey. But I think now with all that Alabama has on staff, with the guys that they've put in the NFL, because that's kind of what matters to players more now, I feel like, is who's going to get me into the NFL? Who's going to get me a lot of money? And I think this staff has, and at their previous stops, enough to where people are going to want to come play for them.
You've always got the Auburn dynamic, too. You've got Hugh Freeze has been a guy who has built his rep on offense. Hadn't gone his way the last couple of years. But I'm interested to see, like, when Alabama and Auburn lock horns for recruits in state, does this change what kids choose?
I don't know if it changed. Then and both schools have gotten some flips as of late, and I think DeBoer has done a really good job recruiting. For those who said he couldn't recruit the South, he's done an excellent job at that. And so, I don't think, because a lot of state of Alabama kids know which one they want to go to, and so I don't know if it changes as far as the dynamic of Alabama and Auburn. I think they're going to be able to get who they want to get, and again, a lot of them kind of know where they want to go and who they don't want to play for.
Yeah. We'll take your questions. If they're on this topic, we'll probably circle back to them later. But we also wanted to talk Oklahoma. Speaking of staff changes, a lot going on there with the defense. Zach Alley's gone. Their DC, Brent Venables, I guess, going to serve as his own defensive coordinator at Oklahoma. Give us a 30,000-foot view of what you're seeing there.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a huge year for Brent Venables in 2025, and I think 2024, he let go the offensive coordinator mid-season, was able to go get Ben Arbuckle to lead the offense as a new coordinator, and then right after the season, Zach Alley departs, goes to West Virginia with his old boss Rich Rod to run the defense there for the Mountaineers, and so again that leaves a hole. And so two coordinators in the offseason for Oklahoma, that's tough. And again, in a very important year for Brent Venables, if he doesn't win this year, could we talk about a new head coach at Oklahoma next year, I think it's very possible. Like, I think it's a huge year for Venables this year. And so we heard the talk. Jim Knowles, Ohio State defense coordinator. There was conversations about him coming to Oklahoma. He ended up going to Penn State. And so again, Oklahoma sitting there thinking, all right, what do we do now? Well, Wes Goodwin from Clemson was an option. They ended up hiring him, coaching outside linebackers. Then Nate Drilling, it was possible he could be the defense coordinator. Well, they hire him, but he's the inside linebackers coach. And then Venables comes out and says he is going to run the defense. And I think this is a really good decision on Brent Venables' part. He didn't get the guy he wanted in Jim Knowles. And I think that would have been a home run hire for Oklahoma, but he didn't get him. He went to Penn State. And so, to me, the next best option, when your back is against the wall, when you have got to win games like Brent Venables does in 2025 at Oklahoma, I think the best decision for him is for him to run the defense, for him to be the play caller of the defense. That's his side of the ball. That is what he knows best, is defense. He was an excellent defensive coordinator at Clemson. We saw some really good defenses come through under him. And so kind of we saw the same thing at Vanderbilt with Clark Lee, who's a defensive guy, said, look, I'm going to run it myself. He turned the offense over to his guys over there. And I think Brent Venables has the chance to do the same thing, to focus. While he will, yes, have a lot of duties as the head coach, he gets to focus on the defense. And I think another awesome thing for Oklahoma on that side of the ball is you look at who's on the defensive staff. They just hired Drilling and Goodwin, who have both been defensive coordinators in their career. They've got Brandon Hall on staff, who also has been a defense coordinator. Todd Bates and Jay Vela also have been defensive coordinators. You've got 5 guys on the defensive staff, including Brent Venables, who have been defensive coordinators in the past. And so Venables may be the play caller, but you have some other guys you can go to help on that side of the ball as well for when he has to do head coaching duties. I think this is a fantastic plan for Oklahoma heading into 2025 on that side of the ball. And while Zach Alley was a fantastic defensive coordinator last year for Oklahoma, I thought that was a really bright spot of the team. And I think he is a brilliant young defensive mind. I think this is the next best option, is to let Brent Venables run this side of the ball. Again, this is his side of the ball, the defense. He's a great defensive mind. And so I think this is a great plan and a great opportunity for Oklahoma to really change the narrative of what we saw in year one for the Sooners in the SEC.
Yeah, by the way, did you see the salary that Knowles signed for at Penn State?
Yes.
I mean, did you ever think we'd be in a day where defensive coordinators are getting paid? Like, I didn't think we'd be there anyway, but like now when schools are putting money into players rather than coaches, it just goes to show you the cost of running a college football business and how competitive it has gotten.
Yeah.
But I had the Clark Lee angle written down as one I wanted to mention, because it's funny. Lee is a guy that I think was in this spot a year ago. Like, I think if Vanderbilt goes 2-10 again, we're having a conversation where he's probably not the head coach. They've made a change. And, of course, Pavia is the guy that got all the attention there last year. But they shaved, I don't know, 11, 12 points off their point total they allowed from 23 to 24. So, like last year, the defense was in good hands. The defense wasn't the issue. It was all the injuries on the offense. And you had to basically shut teams out to win games last year if you were OU. And it's also been a tumultuous time for them. They got rid of Ted Roof after 2003. Losing Alley to West Virginia, I'm like, okay, do you have a stability problem? Well, probably not really, because Rich Rod and he worked together at Jacksonville State. So I think, and he had recommended Alley, I think, for another job. So I don't look at this as hey, this whole thing's gone bad, I'm going to get out of a sinking ship. This feels to me more like let's go where I'm familiar. And by the way, I think he's from that area of the country. He's from, went to Clemson, is from Charlotte. So that's probably a thing. I don't know if he's got family or what, but I can see that as being part of it too. But I do want to bring up one thing, and it does feel like coaches like, okay, if I've got my back against the wall, I can trust myself to coach my side of the ball. And it's a bet on you to figure it out. But there's one thing, and I hate to bring this up, but man, he's got a lot going on in his personal life. His wife's had cancer. They got 4 kids. I do wonder about and prayers for him and his family. It's an awful thing to go through. I cannot imagine having your wife go through that in addition to being the father of 4. But I do have to wonder, Chase, at a time where I would think that his free time would be shrinking, putting one more thing on his plate in that spot is an interesting move.
It is, yeah, and that's an interesting thing to think about, and how it will affect that. But I think he probably knows what he can handle and what he can. But again, he's kind of coaching for his life here, for his career at Oklahoma. And so, I think that's ultimately what led to the decision. But, as long as he can manage it, like I think he's going to be really good. And I think we'll see a much different product on the field this year, and especially because Ben Arbuckle really is very capable of leading the offense. He's a good offensive coordinator. And so I think it's going to work well.
He's one of those guys that, like, sometimes your circumstances are just really unusual, right? Let's go back and rewind. He's becoming a first-time head coach when he takes this job. What was it, before the 22 season?
Yep.
So that's a big transition, number one. You're also moving to a new area of the country, although he's from he went to Kansas State, so he's kind of from the Midwest, although he was born in Florida. So that's one thing. As soon as you get there, what happens? You change conferences. Last year in the Big 12, you looked at them in the computers, they were top 30. They just lost every single close game. You come to the SEC, which is hard enough. And then you cannot keep an offensive line and a receiving core together from basically the first quarter of opening day. Like, that was a problem for them all year. I remember we did these at one point where we're like, okay, you've got their top 5 wideouts are all gone. You throw in the thing with his wife. Like, I think we could plausibly replay this career. And with breaks going different in a number of different ways, I do wonder what it looks like for Brent Venables.
No, yeah, I mean, you've got to wonder how it would look. It kind of just seems like he's been at a tough. Whether you think he's just been at a tough position. I feel like in so many different ways that things just haven't been able to click. He hasn't really had the opportunity to have his guys to be at full strength. And so, yeah, I feel like his back has been kind of against the wall the whole time he's been there.
Yeah, I'm rooting for it to go better. I think the SEC with Oklahoma being good would be it'd be a better thing for the league. And of course, the situation with his family and his wife, it's an awful thing. So you don't wish that on anybody. Let's talk Missouri. Getting a new quarterback. Brady Cook now gone. I thought you could argue Brady Cook was the most underrated, underappreciated player in the SEC the last 2 years. You look at how many games Missouri won with him. Now you get a new look. They get one of the top guys in the portal, a high-profile transfer that got a lot of run during the playoff with that situation at Penn State. What do we make of this one?
I'm interested in this because, we saw Drew Pine come in some last year. Obviously, Brady Cook battled some injury, and so we saw Drew Pine come in, and he just wasn't very consistent at quarterback. And so I was wondering what the move was going to be, in the offseason for Missouri. And obviously, Eli Drinkwitz has put together a couple of good years and wants to continue that, and so they go get Beau Pribula from Penn State, and the reports out there on an NIL deal worth about 1.5 million.
Goodness.
And so they got the checkbook out to bring in a quarterback. And so, the conversation right now is that, hey, he's not the starting quarterback yet. He's going to be in a quarterback. If you spend that kind of money on a quarterback, I imagine it's going to be all but the starter. And so I'm assuming, under the impression that he's going to be the starting quarterback. I think that I think he can help it be more of a run heavy offense, because I do think he is a good runner, and I think maybe that's kind of the direction they want to go in, is let's get this run game going. Let's because look, Brady Cook was a game changer. We talked about it all the time. Like, he can make plays, and I don't think Pribula is that kind of guy, but I still think he's a really good quarterback, and he can move. He can throw, he can move. He's a dual threat guy, and so I think he'll be a good fit in what Eli Drinkwitz likes to do, but there's not a ton of experience there. Like, you're spending a lot of money on a quarterback who doesn't have a ton of playing experience. While he's been on a good team, played under a good quarterback, got some time, and I feel like experience matters at quarterback, and he just doesn't have a ton of it. So I'm curious how that fits in. They just signed 4-star Matt Zollers out of high school, and I think he could compete for the job. He's that good of a quarterback. But again, they spent a lot of money on Pribula, and so I'm interested to see how he fits, because again, I don't think he's Brady Cook, but I still think he's a good quarterback, and maybe we do see a run first offense from Missouri in 2025.
Yeah, it's an interesting change in direction, because his guys before, going back to Connor Bazelak, who still was playing college football this year, that feels like that was forever ago, have been, for the most part, passing guys. I think Cook had some mobility, but he's not going to, it's not like they're throwing Diego Pavi out there. I'm very interested to see how this works. I guess Sam Horn's still around, though. Maybe I don't know if he's a baseball player at this point or what he is. But yeah, seeing the shift in direction was interesting, and you saw some of the mobile guys like John Mateer, off the board, guys like that back at Oklahoma. You saw Jackson Arnold go from Oklahoma to Auburn. Luther Burden will be gone. They had some experienced receivers. This is a kid who ran for more yards at Penn State than he threw for. Not that his passing numbers were bad. But I will be interested to see if this is a one-off thing, or this is more of a direction Eli Drinkwitz would like to go in the future, because it's not been what they've really done in the past.
Right. Yeah. They're going to have to get used to some change here, and work some things out. And could you see it bumpy at the beginning? Yeah, I think you could, because it's going to be different. They're going to have to take a different approach, I feel like. No matter who's a quarterback, no matter what they're doing, they're going to have to be okay with it looking different this year at Missouri.
Yeah. And he did have some good rushing games last year, Cook did, but it was more against the lesser defenses. Like when they ran into an Alabama, South Carolina, and Auburn, it didn't go quite as well. So maybe it's a little bit more of a, I don't know if it's a shift in philosophy, but it's interesting.
It is. And I think a shift in philosophy is okay, is good for Missouri. For not to be the same old thing every time. I think that's good for them to change it up some. And I think Pribula is a good quarterback. Like, I think once he has time, I think spring will be good for him to get some time, working with the guys there at Missouri. So, yeah, I think this is a good change for the Tigers.
I'm looking at this for next year. It's going to be a league full of mobile quarterbacks. Let me pull this up to make sure I don't forget anybody. But Texas with Arch Manning, you saw occasionally at times when they needed more running. Nico can run at Tennessee. Alabama, depending on where Alabama goes, there's some ability there with Ty Simpson. Nussmeier at LSU, not that guy. Lenore Sanders absolutely is. Looking down the list, Lagway a little bit. You got Diego Pavi at Vandy. Taylor Green's back for one more year at Arkansas, right?
He is, yeah.
Mateer at Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold at Auburn. You got a lot of guys in this league who are mobile quarterbacks, more than I feel like we've seen in a while.
Yeah, that's very true. And, I think, again, I think that's best for a lot of teams. Like, that can cause problems for opposing defenses when you have to stop a mobile quarterback. Now, they may get used to it with so many dual threat guys, it maybe become something natural, but I feel like it's harder to prepare for. And so I think that's kind of the direction a lot of teams are going to make it difficult in preparation.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts on Missouri's quarterback situation? Anything else we covered? Any other storylines worth getting into today?
Yeah, I think the moves, especially the coaching world that we talked about with Alabama and Oklahoma, I think those are, big moves that I think are going to help a lot, and for both Alabama and Oklahoma. So, look, there's always a lot going on in SEC football. We're going to do this twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're going to go live here, so you can plan on joining us for both of those days. We'll spend 45 minutes or so, like we're doing today on Tuesdays and Thursdays, just talking SEC football and all the storylines that are coming out of it. And so, again, there's always things going on, and if we didn't talk about your team today, we will get through them, I promise, as we do these every week. So, I think that that good hires from what we've seen on staffs, and this is one of the rare years where you don't really have a head coaching turnover in the SEC, but there's a lot of coordinator changes that I think are really going to benefit these programs.
Yeah, well, let me summarize my morning. Was talking basketball this morning, was doing baseball research, and then jumped on this. That is life here at Southeastern 16. We cover all three of those major men's sports. To get it, hit the subscribe button. Leave this a like if you don't mind. Tell your friends. We do baseball, basketball, football here year-round at Southeastern 16. Looking forward to doing this again soon. For Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. You have been watching Southeastern Conference football content here at Southeastern 16.